Hey y'all, welcome back to A Dinosaur in the Library. I'm Dawn, and I've got a double book review for you today. I'm a couple days late, and I'm probably going to maintain that schedule simply because I can't do anything on time lately. I don't have anything major late, but I always feel like I'm running behind with everything, so yeah. And it does not help that I have been jamming in as much leisure reading as I have been, but it is what keeps me sane, so I've been jamming it in at every opportunity. And I've got two books I want to talk about today. They're very much related, so that's why I decided to do them at the same time. The first one is I, Rigoberta Menchu, an Indian Woman in Guatemala by Rigoberta Menchu, as translated by Anne Wright. And then the second book I'll be talking about is Until We Are Free, My Fight for Human Rights in Iran by Shirin Ebadi. So this first book, I read this multiple years ago. It first came out in English in '84, and I think I was probably 13 or 14 when I read this the first time, so that's 22, 23 years ago. So it had been a very long time since I read this book, but Rigoberta Menchu was on campus here on Friday, and I had the opportunity to go listen to her speak. Peace Jam, which is, I don't know a whole lot about Peace Jam, but they provide leadership training and leadership workshops for high school kids and college students to teach them how to be leaders and promote a more peaceful world. That's the extent of my knowledge about them, but the branch on campus at FSU, they've been bringing Nobel laureate, peace laureates to campus every year. Unfortunately, they are terrible about advertising it. So I had no idea that these people had been on campus these last few years, but I just happened to see someone mention it on Facebook and was able to go to this event. So if you don't know who Rigoberta Menchu is, she is an indigenous Guatemalan woman who has worked tirelessly for oppressed people in her own country as well as across the globe. And in '92, I believe, she was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for that work. And this is just the story of her life and the story of her beginnings in the fight to free her people from the oppression that they are under. So she grew up in the hills, the mountains of Guatemala, no formal education, extremely poor. They essentially worked on plantations. They would go down and work for minuscule amounts of money, and I mean, just massively minuscule, like sharecropper, but even less than sharecropper wages. And not even sharecropper wages, more like itinerant worker wages, and even less than that. So they really didn't have any legal repercussions that they could expect because the politicians were in the pockets of the people who own the plantations, and they were not well treated. And so there were multiple organizations established, and she grew up as a 13, 14-year-old woman going out and helping fight for the rights of her people. And it's just an amazing story, and she was an absolutely amazing speaker. She can speak some English. She spoke a little bit of English when she came up to the podium, but she presented in Spanish, which was not her first language. Her first language was an indigenous language, the name of which I know she mentions at some point in this book, but I cannot remember, and I'm so sorry for that. But she grew up speaking an indigenous language and only learned Spanish later when it became clear that that really was the language she was going to have to learn in order to work with the government and work with other NGOs and work with the oppressed. It was a more standard language because there are so many indigenous languages in Guatemala. So it allowed her to speak to more people and be understood, and to understand more people in this fight. So then she later has learned some English. I'm not sure how extensive her English skills are, but the point is that she spoke in Spanish and had translators, and it was just an amazing thing. She talked a lot about how young people are really going to be able to, do something and make changes that need to be made. But in order to do that, we have to wake up and pay attention and vote and pay attention to politics and make sure that people, and she didn't call names, but she said, make sure we don't have a racist as the next president. There are several people she could have met, but there's one we all know she's talking about, Donald Trump, of course. So, but she just really talked a lot about her experiences and how that led her to be able to work for peace in the world, and how no matter what sort of, life you've had, you always have the possibility of helping others. And I think that that was something that was extremely important for a lot of people to hear, because I know a lot of times, especially young people, which I'm not that old, but I'm older than most of the undergraduates and older than a good portion of the graduate students. I am 36 at this point. But a lot of times, especially younger people, feel like they don't have any power. And in a lot of ways, that's true. We don't have much power as individuals, but you can always help someone. And that gives you power in that situation to improve that particular person's life in some way. And that's an important thing. And through her stories and through her life and experiences, I think this was one of the most important things that she had to say. And you pick that up more in her speaking than in this book, but she talks a lot about the importance of helping those that you can help, and the importance of working hard and doing the things that you are capable of doing to make changes in the world. And it's obvious why she won the Nobel Peace Prize. She's an amazing, amazing woman. And the funny thing was, one of my cohort members, is a friend of mine, she texted me this afternoon and she said, she does a mentoring program, and she said, one of my mentees sent me this picture. And it was a picture of her mentee. And she said, we were taking pictures with this woman, and they said from Nicaragua, like you, because my friend is originally from Nicaragua, and everybody was taking pictures with her at the mall, and it's Rigoberta Menchu. So, it's like, oh, what are you doing today? Oh, nothing, just, running into Nobel laureates at the mall. Y'all. Unfortunately, there were a lot of people there, so I did not get to speak to Miss Menchu very long, just to say hello and to take a quick picture, which is on my Instagram, I think. I'll make sure it is if it's not there already. But she's not really looking up. She's signing books, but it was just an amazing experience to be that close to someone who was that awesome. I did get her autograph on my copy of I, Rigoberta Menchu. If I'd had money, she had a children's book that I would love to have had, but I am broke. So if you have not read this, go get you a copy. I guarantee you'll be able to find it used. It came out in 1984, and there have been other versions, I think, since then. This just happens to be the one that I ordered from Amazon because it was basically the cheapest one and I had discount code. There's also another memoir called Crossing Borders, but I have not read that one yet, and I really do want to get to that one pretty soon. So check this one out if you had not. I gave it 4 or 5 stars, either one. It was amazing. And then the second book I read, as I said, was Until We Are Free, My Fight for Human Rights in Iran by Shirin Ebadi. Shirin Ebadi is another Nobel Peace Prize laureate. She won in 2003. So almost just about 10 years after Rigoberta Menchu. And Shirin Ebadi was one of the very first women to serve as a judge in Iran. And she did so until the Islamic Revolution in 1979, at which point she was no longer able to be a judge, but she served as a lawyer. And she worked a great deal on human rights cases, anything like that, that were, these things like that were being perpetrated by the Iranian government after, particularly after, and I always mispronounce the man's name, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, was the one, the one that rose to power in 2005. There was a lot of censorship, a lot of very fundamentalist religion brought into politics, and so a lot of human rights violations started happening, even more than usual. And Shirin Ebadi did a lot of work with them and suffered a lot of persecution for it. In fact, she is in exile and has been since, I think, 2013, 2011, somewhere in there. After a second election, re-elected the same man, she was unable to re-enter the country. She was out of the country at a conference when it happened, and she was unable to re-enter. And her daughters live abroad and study at different universities. But this book is all about the later portions of her life, these last few years, especially after her exile, what it has done to her family, and the many, many ways that the Iranian government has devolved into this dictatorship that is really harming the livelihoods and lives of people in Iran. And it was a really good read. It was a really interesting read. I got through this really quickly. I probably would have gotten through it even more quickly if I had not had things I needed to do. But you should definitely go check this out. I got this one from the public library. It's pretty darn new. I think it only came out the last month or two. But so yeah, these are two really good nonfiction memoir-esque books that by two Nobel Peace Prize laureates that are amazing stories of really powerful, strong women working really hard to try to help their particular country, their particular people, and you know, what that has cost them and what that means for their lives. And I think that I know not everybody I'm speaking to is perhaps in the U.S. And is not from the U.S., that kind of thing. But if you are, you know, I haven't lived the most amazingly perfect life. You know, I haven't had, you know, a lot of privileges that some people have had. However, I have had so many more than these women have had. I have never had to fight in the ways that they have. You know, I have to fight for other things, but not in the ways that they have. And I think it's really, really important for people to understand that these things still go on in the world. These are not in the past. A lot of Rigoberta, this book is from the 70s, 60s, 70s on, but these things don't go away. This is not that long ago, and this is current. These are of the last 5-10 years, and this is a brand new book. So these are things that we really, really, really need to understand and look at as, to make ourselves more aware and more conscious of what's happening in the world so that we can do good things in our own universe, right? So these books very much reminded me of things that I would have, you know, I would have put these on my list for the Be a Better Human tag that I did months ago, which I will link down below, because these are amazingly important books and I think everybody should read them. And if you haven't, please do. You will more than likely be able to find them at your library. And if not, they may be able to request them for you. And that's all I really had for you guys today. I will see you next time. Bye.